Israel can't fight 7 wars or whatever, how many fronts they have at any given time without the United States paying for most of it, which we do. And so we can withdraw the support and thereby control, at least theoretically control Israel's behavior. We never have, but we could. This would, if it becomes law, integrate the militaries to such an extent that the United States would actually be at the mercy of Israel. So Israel withdraws technology and the United States military is hamstrung. So it would actually put Israel in the driver's seat.
That's right. 100% correct. And as such, it's adverse to the national security interests of the United States of America.
So that's former 8-term Congressman Dennis Kucinich. If you remember him from some of the presidential runs, you'll remember that mainstream media was like, Dennis Kucinich, he's crazy. He's against us funding Israel. Apparently not crazy. So what they're talking about is Section 219, which takes away American sovereignty and merges the technology of our military with Israel's military. So we're going to tell you a lot more about that, but I'm also going to come back to, yes, but what do Jewish Americans think of what's happening in this regard? And some of those numbers might shock you. So we'll come back to that. But Anna, tell us about Section 219 and what happened here.
Well, it does look as though pressure from voters, which tends to still work, has slightly moved Democratic Congressman Adam Smith's decision or position on supporting Section 219. Now, let me just pause and say the fact that this Democratic lawmaker ever supported the idea of merging a foreign military with our own is disgusting and treasonous. And in fact, he's one of the leaders in the Armed Services Committee who blocked Representative Ro Khanna's amendment to strip Section 219 from the National Defense Authorization Act. So he's part of the problem, but he apparently got so much pushback from his constituents that he's like, yeah, maybe I'm changing my mind a little bit. I really want to save my political career. So anyway, this is relevant, again, because he's the head of the House Armed Services Committee, and it is also important to note that he blocked Ro Khanna's amendment. But now, here's what he's saying. According to the Wall Street Journal, he said, quote, "It's my position that the provision should be stripped out." Fascinating. Now, he explains that he was driven by the talks he's been having with his constituents. Thank you to those constituents. I love you and appreciate you. He cited the case of a Turkish American activist who was slaughtered by Israeli settlers in the West Bank as part of his reasoning behind it. Smith described himself as a strong supporter of Israel's right to exist, but very critical of the Netanyahu government, especially its West Bank policies. He also says you have to put pressure on Israel somewhere. And I want to be clear that the problem with Israel isn't simply the fact that it's led by a genocidal freak like Benjamin Netanyahu. If you look at polling, the vast majority of Israelis absolutely love the slaughter of innocents and love the idea of expanding their borders, but I digress. Now, it seems the same ridiculous argument in favor of deregulating or keeping AI deregulated is the same argument that goons like Representative Smith are using to defend a possible military merger at the same time. So Bradley Bowman, by the way, he's from the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, said this to the Wall Street Journal, quote, "We need to compete with China," he says. "That requires learning from beleaguered democracies like Ukraine, Taiwan, and also Israel, which is the best in the world in some areas of defense tech." Okay. And then the Wall Street Journal editorial board says this: Israel excels at going from concept to fully funded combat capability, a US weakness. Why the F have we been providing close to $1 trillion a year to the Pentagon if you're gonna tell me that our military ain't crap? Seriously, please explain it to me. Why are American taxpayers shelling out more and more money every single year to our Pentagon, which hasn't passed a single audit, not one? And then on top of that, we're gonna hear from the Wall Street Journal editorial board about how like, oh, the Americans, they need the Israelis. We absolutely must merge our militaries because our military, dog crap. They can't get it done. Their combat capabilities, trash. We need the Israelis. First of all, I'm not buying it. Second of all, it's amazing to me how many goons and ghouls in this country, both in politics and our media, will literally trash our own country and our own military in order to defend Israel's treachery and greed, because that's what this is about. Israel doesn't like the fact that the American people are against them. They don't want to deal with the criticism. So wouldn't it be easier to, kind of skirt the whole MOU thing where we send them billions of dollars every year and instead just have them in our military, taking advantage of the $1.5 trillion that Trump is asking for the next National Defense Authorization Act?
So when he went to explain why Israel's so important, that is a super weak excuse that we need to be better at fully funded combat capability.
Are we not fully funded?
I mean, wait, how could Israel be more fully funded than us? If he's talking about quick response in combat, apparently the Iranians are the best in the business at it. The Ukrainians are pretty good. Are we gonna merge our military? Okay, Iran's an enemy. They don't need to be, they are because Israel made them our enemy. But okay, let's go to Ukraine. Are we gonna merge our military with Ukraine because they've very quickly adjusted to what the Russians did and fought back? No, of course not. We would never consider that. Over something as simple as we need to adjust a little bit quicker in the battlefield. Well, why don't we get our military to learn how to adjust quicker?
You know what,
do we not have eyes? Do we not have satellite? Do we not have Starlink? Do we not have any intelligence? We don't know what the Ukrainians did. We don't know what the Iranians did. Do you see how lame and weak this excuse is?
No, Cenk.
And one more, Anna. And apparently it requires a full merger of our military technology so they can have it all in order to do this tiny little thing that we could do on our own.
How many hours did it take the IDF to respond to October 7th? How many hours? How many effing hours did it take the IDF to respond to Hamas on October 7th? I believe it was 6 hours.
Real quick, when's the last time you actually checked your Medicare plan? Can't remember? That's what I thought. But the costs creep up, the plans change every year, and they're counting on you not noticing. It's another rigged system. So please check with Chapter, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're independent, they're honest, they advocate for you, not the insurance companies. A listener of ours out in California was skeptical when he first dialed Chapter, but in just one call, they found him coverage he'd been missing for months, and he's not alone. People who switch to Chapter save more than $1,000 a year on average. And if you're already on the best plan, they'll just tell you. Free help in under 20 minutes, call 805-201-2275. Worst case, you'll be certain that you have the best coverage. Best case, you stop overpaying and get the coverage you need at the lowest possible price. That's 805-201-2275.
6 freaking hours.
Yeah.
And they have the audacity, the Wall Street Journal editorial board has the audacity to tell us that our military is garbage and we need the Israelis. The Israelis are so much more superior than the Americans are, right? Their capabilities are incredible. It only took them 6 hours to respond on October 7th. These people are so ghoulish and disgusting. I can't stand it anymore. And to the constituents who apparently applied enough pressure to get this gross congressman to maybe reconsider his position, thank you. Keep your boot on his head, okay? Ensure that this provision is stripped out of the final bill, because once this is done, there's no going back, it's over. It's over.
Yeah, so as usual, what is the amendment that is proposed to strip out this provision? It's the Massey amendment. There they are again, the only people doing anything in Congress. So let's go to Tom Massey explaining why. He said, my amendment to strip section 219 from the NDAA was rejected last week by the Rules Committee without even a debate. But their rule for the NDAA didn't pass the House. When we reconvene, I will offer my amendment again to strip the merger of our military supply chain with Israel's. So there's no need for that merger, as Massey on the right explains, Ro Khanna on the left explains. But on top of that, they didn't even allow a vote. So that's how much Israel controls us, where they go, you're not even allowed to have your representatives who work for us anyway have a vote on this. No, you are to merge our militaries based on the weakest excuse we've ever had in creation. And you have no voice at all, and you're to all shut up and do as Israel orders you to do, but they don't control us at all. and that's an anti-Semitic position. No, to be fair, we merged our military with Honduras a couple of weeks ago, and there was no vote on that either. Oh, right, no, that hasn't happened with any other country, would never happen, including with huge allies that have enormous militaries like the UK, France, Canada. There's no talk of merging our militaries, there's none of that, only Israel, and no votes allowed, okay? Now, there's one other aspect of this, Anna, that I want to talk about. So this is all painted as, but if you object, you're an anti-Semite. That's interesting, because there's new polling out from the Associated Press, and it confirms all the other polls that I've seen, but that you never see unless you're watching the Young Turks, honestly. So you've heard me say this stat many times, and the Associated Press confirms the other poll that I got, by the way, from the Jewish American press, which is that the earlier poll said 63% of Jewish Americans are opposed to the current Israeli government. Associated Press confirms over 60% of Jewish Americans currently opposed to the Israeli government, right? That doesn't mean they hate Israel or they're opposed to the Israeli nation or Israeli people, but they're against Netanyahu's government. Only a third of Jewish Americans support Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Now, part of the reason I tell you that, I've got more, but part of the reason I tell you that is because if you turn on a television set or you read a mainstream media outlet, you'd never think that Jewish Americans were opposed to the Israeli government. You would think, if you oppose the Israeli government, you're a vicious anti-Semite. I mean, that's what they say 24/7. In fact, Alyssa Farah Griffin said it to Marjorie Taylor Greene today. When Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about AIPAC's influence on elections on The View, she's like, that is an anti-Semitic thing to say. Well, are 63% or over 60% of Jewish Americans anti-Semites? But wait, 4 out of 10 say that Israel went way too far in Gaza and their actions were unjustified. Did you get a sense that 40% of Jewish Americans were livid about what happened in Gaza? Do you know that 30% of Jewish Americans call what happened in Gaza a genocide? Okay, so you never hear from those folks because it's not convenient for Israel. What is convenient for Israel is to pretend that they represent all Jews and all Jewish Americans, and that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic and hence must be shut down by definition, never allowed in media. So under their absurd ideology, which almost everyone in media agrees to, including what just happened today on television, right? And according to all of our politicians, that means that about 2/3 of Jewish Americans are anti-Semitic because they also have morals and say, no, what's going on in Israel and Gaza is not right, right? So only 1/3 support the lunatic Netanyahu government. And yet if you turn on television, you'd think it was 200% of Jewish Americans, which by the way is also anti-Semitic, actually anti-Semitic. To say that Jews are in favor of a genocide when they're not, to say that they're in favor of this barbaric Netanyahu government when they are not, okay? So, and then you see, this isn't about religion, this isn't about Jews or Muslims or Christians. No, this is about one nation that has brilliantly figured out how to get a hold of our government. And the way you do it is you buy up the media and you are the #1 contributor to members of Congress. It's that simple, and then you have the country until online media came along. And that's why now they're furious because this type of stuff would have passed with no one noticing. Because to this day, mainstream media has barely written about this.
No, they don't. I mean, honestly,
almost nothing.
The Wall Street Journal's editorial board wrote about it.
And only because Adam Smith had flipped on it.
That's exactly right.
And they're like, this is gonna pass for Israel. By the way, we're not controlled by Israel.
Our military is trash. We need Israel. We spend $1 trillion a year on our military, but they just can't do it. Sorry, we need Israel. They're so advanced with their technology. Their intel is so great. Their intel is so great that they couldn't even figure out that Hamas was plotting October 7th, even though the intelligence was literally in their own hands.
See, Rupert Murdoch's a great example. Rupert Murdoch owns Wall Street Journal, Fox News, New York Post. Those are the most Zionist outlets in America by a lot. Rupert Murdoch is a crazed lunatic Zionist, not Jewish. But he loves and supports every war and every genocide and every piece of torture that Israel does. Murdoch loves it. I don't know, maybe because he's Darth Vader and he's like, oh, they look almost as evil as I am, right? So that is why when you say owned by Zionists, it doesn't necessarily mean Jewish people at all, okay? So that entire operation owned by Murdoch, not at all Jewish, but as radical as Zionists as you will find on planet Earth. And so all those guys are purposely not covering Section 219, except Murdoch goes, "You attack Adam Smith. He has defied Israel," right? And that editorial board completely reports into Rupert Murdoch, 100% controlled by him.
Benjamin Netanyahu defended Israeli settlers in the West Bank today while talking to Dana Bash on CNN. Just understand what our media is and do yourself a huge favor. Check out what's being said and reported with Israeli media because they tell the truth. They assume that no American's ever gonna read what they're saying and writing about and reporting on. So they actually report the truth. You should read those publications.
And guys, that is the same reason why Netanyahu and some of the Israelis are so frustrated now that America won't bend as quickly and easily as they normally
Our government does.
Our government does, but not the people. And that's why they're not allowing votes, because they're worried. It's not like they'd lose the vote. All those servants of Israel would vote to merge our militaries anyway. They're all in favor of it. That's why it's sailing through Congress without a vote.
But they'd have to deal with the reckoning.
But if they were to put their name on the vote, they know they've lost the American people, and then they would have to account for, why the hell did you merge our militaries and cost us all of our intelligence and trillions of dollars that we spent on our technology, intelligence, and data? And so they don't want those consequences, but they're all panicked in this scenario because in the old days, they 100% controlled mainstream media. And so they would just lie to you 24/7, say, oh, they're the victims and all this stuff, and they're only doing self-defense, and all the Muslims are savages and terrorists who need to be killed, right? But now, we have to merge our militaries because Israel helps us so much. They have all of these talking points that have never been challenged. The minute online media challenged them, poof, boom, house of cards, right? Us merging our militaries today in that Wall Street editorial board conversation, they were like, that helps America more than it helps Israel.
Yeah,
giving Israel $320 billion helped us more than it helped. And you know what I say to that? Great, then we'll help Israel. You give us all of your technology without getting anything back from us, and you give us $320 billion. Because apparently it's gonna help you so much. You're welcome. And they go, no way. No way, Israel doesn't owe you anything. You owe Israel everything, right? Including your entire military. Merge them right away, no votes allowed. But Israel doesn't control. My ass, it doesn't control. This shows you definitively that Israel controls our Congress.
Note it.
No, but Anna, the debate we have is whether it's 80, 90, or 100% controlled. So if they merge this without a vote, then yeah, okay, you could say Trump's not 100% because he sold F-35s to Turkey, but Congress has always been Israel's bitch.
To the American people, keep your boot on their necks.
Okay, super last thing. Look, guys, under Obama does a deal that Israel doesn't like with Iran. Okay, it's exceptions to the rule. Trump selling the F-35s, Obama doing the Iran deal. I don't know if there's a third example of a US president defying Israel. I know Kennedy did. Anyway, so now when it comes to Congress though, as Obama was saying no to Israel, the Democrats and Republicans were giving standing ovations to Netanyahu in Congress.
Yep.
They were bowing to him like, your great leader has arrived. Who cares about stupid President Obama? And now the Republicans are like, who cares about stupid President Trump? Netanyahu, Israel, we bow, right? You're telling me Congress isn't controlled? 94% of Congress got checks from the Israeli lobby. It's obvious, overwhelming control.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.